On September 17th, 1999, Charlton Heston, who was the vice president of the NRA, gave a blistering, memorable speech about the Second Amendment and the role that the Second Amendment plays in guarding the rest. I'm going to read his speech and add my thoughts to it. I'm certainly not as eloquent as Mr. Heston, but what he said on that day matters especially today in view of the marches that took place on Saturday around the country. Mr. Heston starts by saying, "Today I want to talk to you about guns, why we have them, why the Bill of Rights guarantees that we have them, and my right to have a gun is more important than yours is to rail against it. I believe every good journalist needs to know why the Second Amendment must be considered more essential than the First Amendment. Now, this may be a bitter pill to swallow, than the right to keep and bear arms. The right to keep and bear arms is not archaic. It's not an outdated, dusty idea some old dead white guys dreamed up in fear of the redcoats. Nope. It's just as essential to liberty today as it was in 1776. And these words might not play well at your press club or whatever other anti-gun group that you are a member of, but it's gospel down at the corner bar and grill. Your efforts to undermine the Second Amendment, to deride it and degrade it, to readily accept diluting it and eagerly promoting redefining it, threaten not only the physical well-being of millions of Americans, but also the core concept of our individual liberty the Founding Fathers struggled to perfect and protect. The original amendments we refer to as the Bill of Rights contain 10 of what the constitutional framers termed unalienable. That means they are not given to us by government. They belong to us, and the Bill of Rights gives caution to government, any government, that you cannot violate those rights. You cannot legislate them away. You cannot repeal one of the 10 without repealing them all. You need to understand that. The rights are ranked in random order, not in order of priority. No right in the Bill of Rights outweighs the other in terms of its importance and unalienability. It protects not just the rights of actors and editors and reporters, but extends to those we love to hate as well. That's why the most heinous criminals have rights until they are convicted of a crime. The beauty of the Constitution can be found in the way it takes human nature into consideration. We're not a docile species capable of coexisting within a perfect society under everlasting benevolent rule. We are violent by nature. We are what we are: egotistical, corruptible, vengeful, sometimes even a bit power mad. The Bill of Rights recognizes this and builds the barricades that need to be in place to protect you and I, the individual. Those who rail against the right of individual Americans to keep and bear arms are zealous in your belief that a free nation must have a free press, free speech to battle injustice, unmask corruption, and provide a voice for those in need of fair and impartial forum. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. A free press is vital to a free society. But I wonder, How many of you will agree with me that the right to keep and bear arms is not just equally vital, but the most vital in protecting all the other rights that we enjoy? I say the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. It's America's first freedom, the one right that protects all of the others. Among freedom of speech, of the press, of religion, of assembly, of redress of grievances, it's the first among equals. It alone offers the absolute capacity to live without fear. Without fear. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all. Either you believe that or you don't. You're going to have to decide. Because there's no such thing as a free nation where police and military are allowed the force of arms, but individual citizens are not. You don't have a free nation when that condition exists. That's a big brother knows best theater of the absurd, and that has never boded well for the peasant class, the working class, or even reporters. Yes, the Constitution provides a doorway for your news and commentary to pass through free and unfettered. But that doorway to freedom is framed by the muskets that stood between a vision of liberty and absolute anarchy at a place called Concord Bridge. Now, our revolution began when the British sent redcoats door to door to confiscate people's guns. They didn't succeed. The muskets went out the back door with their owners. If confiscation ever crosses the mind of anyone who has any sanity in them, you should remember that. King George called us rabble in arms. But it's been said throughout history over the last several hundred years that the creation of the United States of America is the greatest political act in history. I'll sign on to that. In the next 2 centuries after the creation of the United States, freedom didn't necessarily flourish around the world. The next revolution, which was the French Revolution, collapsed in bloody terror. Then you had Napoleon's tyranny. There's been no shortage of dictators since in many countries: Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Mao Zedong, Idi Amin, Dada, Castro, Pol Pot, and others. All these monsters began by first confiscating private arms, then literally soaking the earth in the blood of tens of millions of their own people. Now, I doubt that any of you would prefer a rolled up newspaper as a weapon against a dictator or a criminal intruder. Yet, in essence, that's what you all are suggesting. That's the essence of what you have asked your loved ones to do through an ill-contrived and totally naive campaign against the Second Amendment. Besides, how can we entrust you to the Second Amendment when you, the press, are so stingy with your own First Amendment? You, in the press, all of the press, you do not define the First Amendment. It defines you. It's bigger than you, big enough to embrace all of you, plus all of those you would exclude. That's how freedom works. It also demands that you do your homework. Again and again, gun owners say, how can we believe anything the anti-gun media says when they can't even get the facts right? They don't want to get the facts right, is the truth. For too long, you in the press have swallowed manufactured statistics, fabricated technical support from anti-gun organizations that wouldn't know a semi-automatic from a hot rock, and it shows, and you fall for it every time. That's why you have very little credibility among millions of gun owners and millions of hunters and millions of veterans who've learned the hard way which end the bullet comes out. And while you attack the amendment that defends your homes and protects your spouses and children, you have denied those of us who have defended all of the Bill of Rights and have refused to give us a fair hearing or courtesy of a debate. Because you don't want to debate. You want to remove all guns. If your attempts are challenged, we are just ignored. If we try to buy advertising time or space to answer your charges, more often than not, we are denied. How's that for First Amendment freedom? Clearly, too many of you use freedom of the press as a weapon not only to strangle our free speech, but to erode and ultimately destroy the right to keep and bear arms as well. In doing so, you promoted your profession to that of constitutional judge and jury, more powerful than even the Supreme Court, more prejudiced than the Inquisition's tribunals. It's a frightening misuse of constitutional privilege that you have, and I pray that you will come to your senses and see that these abuses are curbed. The right to keep and bear arms is threatened by political theatrics, piecemeal lawmaking, talk show psychology, extreme bad taste in the entertainment industry, an ever-widening educational system in our schools, and the conniving media. That all adds up to cultural warfare against the idea that guns ever had or should have now an honorable and proud place in our society. But all of our rights must be delivered into the 21st century as pure and complete as they came to us at the beginning. Traditionally, the passing of that torch is from gnarled old hands down to eager young ones. So now, I offer my gnarled old hands. The right to keep and bear arms is threatened by political theatrics, piecemeal lawmaking, talk show psychology, extreme bad taste in the entertainment industry, an ever-widening educational system in our schools, and the conniving media. That all adds up to cultural warfare against the idea that guns ever had or should have now an honorable and proud place in our society. But all of our rights must be delivered into the 21st century as pure and complete as they came to us at the beginning. Traditionally, the passing of that torch is from gnarled old hands down to eager young ones. So now, I offer my gnarled old hands. We've raised a couple of generations of young people, and it's getting worse, who think that the Bill of Rights comes to them with cable TV or through their gaming stations. Leave them to their channel surfing and their gaming, and they'll remain totally oblivious to history and the heritage that truly matters. Think about it. What else must young Americans think when the White House proclaims, as it did, a firearm in the hands of youth is a crime or an accident waiting to happen? No. It's time that the young people learn that firearm ownership is constitutional, not criminal. In fact, few pursuits can teach a young person more about responsibility, safety, and conservation their history and heritage all at once. Let me say this again. Firearm ownership is constitutional, not criminal. It's time the young people found out that politically correct doctrine of today has misled them. And then when they reach legal age, if they do not break our laws, they have a right to choose to own a gun, a handgun, a long gun, a small gun, a large gun, a black gun, a purple gun, an ugly gun, any gun. And to use that gun to defend themselves and their loved ones, or to engage in any lawful purpose they wish without apology or explanation to anyone ever. We need to teach the young people that the Second Amendment and the right to own and carry and bear a firearm is their first freedom. If you say it's outdated, then you haven't read your own headlines or studied your own history. If you say guns only create carnage, I would tell you that you know better. Declining morals, disintegrating families, vacillating political leadership, corroding criminal justice system, and social mores that blur right and wrong are more to blame, certainly more than a legally owned firearm. We all together need to save the Second Amendment from nitpicking little wars of attrition over Saturday night specials and ghost guns and cop killer bullets and fully semi-automatic assault rifles. It's time that we get rid of so many other made-for-prime time non-issues invented by those who think guns should just go away. None of us should stand by and watch a right that's guaranteed by the Constitution come under attack from those who either can't understand, don't like the sound of it, or just find themselves too philosophically squeamish to see why it remains the first among equals. Because it's the right that we turn to when all else fails. That's why the Second Amendment is America's first freedom. So to everyone who listens to this, go forth and tell the truth. There can be no free speech, no freedom of the press, no freedom to protest, no freedom to worship, no freedom to speak your mind, no freedom to not worship, no freedom from fear, no freedom for your children or theirs, for anybody, anywhere, without the Second Amendment freedom to fight for it. Thanks for watching. Carry on.